Okay, before we get into any discussion, I want you to say it with me. Tomas Tatar. Okay, I'm not going to do that. No, we're not going to do that here. We're going to talk about Tatar, though, because this is a video that I think everybody kind of has had in the back of their minds, and because of the uncertainty going into the next few seasons, what I wanted to do here was just take a look at Tomas Tatar holistically. Not this season, not last season, but as a guy throughout his entire career, and just bring things up as we go along in the story, because with the way Tomas Tatar, a Montreal Canadiens forward who is 30 years old and in need of a contract for this upcoming season, has pretty much fizzled out of the team, I think there is indeed some discussion that we should be having at the very least when it comes to Tatar, who he is, what he has been, and what he ended up becoming for the Habs. Thank you to those in the... oh my goodness, I don't even remember the last time we did one of these things, but I think it was the similarities between 93 and 2021 Habs video. Yeah, I think it's my fault that they lost the cup, guys. I'm very sorry. But in the comment section of that video, I had y'all comment Brian Bellows. Whoever did that, thank you so much. If you want a chance to be featured in the next Habs discussion, then stick around to the end of this video. But today we're talking about Tomas Tatar, a guy who, for the Montreal Canadiens, is indeed 30 years old and who put up 30 points in 50 games played in the regular season. 10 goals, 20 assists, a pretty good stat line. In fact, one of the top producers offensively for the Montreal Canadiens squad. He was fourth in scoring with 30 points, and in terms of goals, I mean, there weren't really too many guys who had a boatload of goals in this team, aside from Anderson, Toffoli, and Suzuki, but Tatar was right there at 6th on the team. However, in the postseason, things didn't really go all too well for Tatar. He played the first 5 games against Toronto, and he only notched up 1 assist in the entire series. It was in Game 3, the Habs lost 2-1 in that game. Eventually, though, after the Canadiens won Game 5, Tomas Tatar was scratched and they inserted everybody else into the lineup instead, that in which was the lineup that we pretty much saw until the end of the season, including a few substitutions like, okay, Evans is out, Stahl's back in, we have a few other guys that are rotating here and there. Tomas Tatar was not a part of this at all. And it is pretty interesting to see how things had gone down, because the big discussion we were having a year ago about Tomas Tatar was where exactly are we going to go with this guy? 1 year ago, he was 29 years old, and he needed a contract extension. His last year for his $5.3 AAV million deal was 2020-2021. So, a year ago, Habs fans were looking at this guy and they said, okay, Tomas Tatar was under a point per game in 2019-20 with 61 points in 68 games played. Fan-freaking-tastic. You're not going to get too many guys who can score at that rate. He was above and beyond the top point guy on the entire Canadian squad. We need to get this guy back, right? Well, back then, we had ourselves some concerns with Tomas Tatar as well. So much to the point that I think it was a lot more easier for Canadiens fans to digest the idea of waiting until the end of the season to re-sign this guy. And what I'm referring to here is the playoffs. Because sure, even though people were talking about Tomas Tatar and how good he was in the regular season, hey, in the playoffs he only had 2 goals in 10 games played. And a lot of people were questioning, okay, this Habs team came out here, they defeated Pittsburgh, they defeated Crosby, they lost in the first round to the Flyers, but that's okay because they were like 8th last in the league or something like that. We had guys like Suzuki and Kotkaniemi and Petrie and Carey Price step up big time in the postseason in 2020, the bubble in Toronto. But Tomas Tatar was not really one of those guys. So, by that logic, it's a little bit easier to say, alright, Tomas Tatar wasn't really all as hyped up to be, because in the playoffs he kind of disappeared in a way. We had contributions from other guys instead. Maybe it would be a good move, let's just say, to wait it out, see what happens in 2021, and see what the plan is for Tatar then. Well, as we noted, 2021 comes, Tatar gets scratched after Game 5 against Toronto. He doesn't play a game after that. That's the last game he plays for the Montreal Canadiens in 2021. And now it's gotten to a point where, when you take a look at what Marc Bergevin said about Tatar the other day, he says that Tatar kept a real positive attitude in the locker room despite being a healthy scratch for much of the playoffs. He didn't cause any problems. Marc Bergevin also thanked Tatar and wished him well if he did not return to Montreal. And you know, I don't know about you, but I don't really ever see NHL GMs talk about their players or their assets in this kind of way. "Oh, he was great to us, he was a good environment guy, thank you, and I wish you well if you don't come back." Who says that? If that is not as telling as to what Marc Bergevin's plan is with Tatar, then I don't know what would be. Here's another update over here. This is what Dominic Ducharme said about Tomas Tatar. This was from a few days ago. It was asked by Greg Wyszynski. Ducharme said, "I like Tuna. Tuna's a good player. It's just a matter of line combinations and playing that time of the year. At this point, he hasn't played in a while. It's even maybe a tougher spot to return. But it's all about the team and what the guys can bring together. We like the fit of our 4 lines tonight." That was a week ago. And so, Tomas Tatar, suiting up for Game 5 against Toronto, honestly, he might have just played his last game with the team. And you know, I'm kind of bittersweet towards that. Because sure, yeah, he didn't really get himself all too much of an opportunity to prove why he should stay in the lineup. I mean, he had all this time in the playoffs with Montreal. He really only produced 3 points in 15 games. And Tatar isn't really like a Philippe Deneau or a Gallagher where if you don't put up points, it's okay because you're still doing other things that help out the team. Tatar is all points all the time. And if he's not scoring points, well, what else is he doing? Now, I'm not going to say that Tatar was completely ineffective. He did have some moments throughout the postseason where he did show off well. It's just he didn't get the results. But at the end of the day, the Habs played a very formulaic system that ended up taking them to the finals, and they didn't need Tatar to do it. So, now, all of a sudden, it's a question of where exactly does he go next season, how much does he sign for, and what exactly is that term? Tatar's a guy who hasn't really been given the big bucks in the NHL. I mean, a $5.3 AAV million deal that lasted for 4 years after it was signed in 2017-2018, that's cool, you know? Awesome to see that right there. It wasn't signed by the Montreal Canadiens, that was actually given out by the Red Wings, but getting that money was honestly pretty good. It's just the way he trended afterwards. You could argue there may be room for a little bit more money in the tank, I guess, if you just take a look at what he did in the regular season. The playoffs, however, are a completely different animal, because ever since Tomas Tatar stepped into the NHL after getting drafted in 2009, he's honestly been a pretty consistent playoff point producer. And by that, take a look at this. After Tatar was drafted in 2009, he made his way over to the Grand Rapids Griffins immediately and showed himself off as a strong point producer over there. In 2010-2011, he was under a point per game. Fantastic season with the Griffins over there. In 2011-2012, even better. Same thing right there. 58 points in 76 games played. Fantastic. During the lockout in 2013, he went back to Slovakia. He went over to the AHL. He played some games in the NHL. But it was in the AHL playoffs where he showed himself off very well, under a point per game. Fantastic right there for a guy who, at the time, was only 23 years old, really good for a second-round caliber prospect. In 2013-14, however, his first full year with Detroit, 73 games played, 39 points, 19 goals, and 20 assists. Imagine that. Making the league for your first ever full season, and you get 19 goals. Fantastic. In the 5-game series against the Boston Bruins, Tomas Tatar had 0 points. Guess what happened the next season? It was the 2015 playoffs against the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Red Wings ended up losing in 7, but Tatar had 4 points in those 7 games, 3 goals, really nice for him. He was at 56 points in 82 games as well in the regular season. At this time, he's 25, and Red Wings fans at this time are like, man, this guy's going to be great for us into the long term, a really good top 6 sniper kind of guy. But then you take a look at what happens afterwards. 2015-16, okay, 5 games played, 3 points in the playoffs, not the best. Then when he gets traded over to Vegas in 2017-2018, and you gotta remember, the Vegas Golden Knights sent over a first, a second, and a third for this guy to acquire him in a rental deal. He had 6 points in 20 games in the regular season and 2 in 8 games in the playoffs. The Golden Knights went to the finals that year, and they ended up scratching Tatar after a little bit because he just wasn't working out. Those first, second, and third round picks ended up really helping the Red Wings, but for the Vegas Golden Knights, they didn't really get all too much out of Tatar. Then he gets traded to Montreal. and we all know what happens there. It's the Pacioretty trade, Tatar, Suzuki, the pick that eventually was traded down to become Matthias Norlinder. Good stuff right there. And for the most part, Tatar is still really good with Montreal. 58 points 2 years ago and 61 in 68 games last season. Fantastic. But the same results happen in the postseason. Tomas Tatar has played 40 NHL playoff games, and he's only gotten 12 points in all of them combined. He's not really the biggest playoff performer, but I still think on most NHL teams he could be a very capable top six winger who can get you some goals and get you some points. It's just, we don't know if that's going to be with Montreal anymore. So, if you made it to the end of this video, comment in the comment section below, Tatar! Just because, you know, one more tribute to the man, why not go ahead at it? Talk to me in the comments what you thought about Tatar and his career in Montreal. If they re-sign him, this video is completely bogus. I don't know if he's going to get re-signed, but I think it's very unlikely. But, talk to me in the comments either way what you think of. You enjoyed this video, Josh Wilson 99. And, bye.